Kiora. I was trying to remember all the Maori language I've learned, called Tena Tato, right? Katua, right? And how do you say greetings? And you can teach me a few words. But one thing I like Maori language is the word hui. It's like Chinese, because meetings and conferences, that we get to talk a lot about different things. And I just got off the airplane from about 28 hours of flight, so you have to forgive me. I was in Scotland, in Edinburgh, just going to my daughter's graduation, and she was, actually this is quite interesting. It's about life circles. That's my daughter. So about 4 years ago, in September, she went to Edinburgh. And I remember actually I flew out of New Zealand to meet her and my wife. We settled her in. And this time after she graduated, I come to New Zealand. None of this has been planned, but as if I'm completing the whole circle, just have to go around the earth to take care of everything. And so it's great. But thanks for having me. And people are asking me about what did your daughter study? I say, well, she studied philosophy and English literature, which is very un-Chinese. Most Chinese kids don't study those majors. And then a lot of people ask, what's she going to do? And I was wondering what's she going to do, actually, about this, too. I was asking her about what she was going to do. She said she's just going to explore whatever might there be. And so she's still exploring. I think she's going to hang out in New York and to stay with my son. My son is studying art history too. So in my family, we are very interested in, I know nothing about art, but we got two children into the art, philosophy, literature part, which really brings me back to think a lot about what education is about. That's why I told Jill I love the theme, Renaissance, rather than reformed. I think in education, over the past few decades, education really has been led astray. And the more we know about education, the more bureaucratic we have been. And teaching has been very much mechanized and trivialized. And we have too many policies. Just now we hear us leaders talk about too many policies, too many reforms, and too many little programs to help you do things slightly better. But at the same time, we might actually be destroying the essence of education, which is really about the humanity of it. I do a lot of work in different countries, and right now you may be thinking globally speaking, education has shown to be a failure in many ways. And my measure of failure or success is that, has it taught us to become more human? Are we getting along better as human beings? Right now, I don't think we're doing very well. Donald Trump, you may not like him, but he's a necessary evil to have. Seriously, he serves as a reminder to see how bad can we get to. Trump is a necessary. Brexit. I was just in Britain. Brexit. All those people, China's Xi Jinping, all those are necessary evils. I'm sorry to tell you, there's authoritarian figures out there are splitting our societies, but we put them there. So I really think that's our education's failure. We've been trying to think education is to raise our PISA scores, to get numeracy and literacy. We've been doing all of those things. But we're not getting better as a human race. You notice that I can't believe how bad we are today after so many years of investment in education, educational research, education reforms. We're no better as a human race in terms of how to view others, how to treat others than, let's say, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, or 5,000 years ago. So let me show you some of the things I've been studying. This is what we call stereotypes. How the Chinese emperor used to treat other people. right? That's how we view other people. Okay, so that's the Chinese emperors. You can see that, right? You can see that's how we think about other people. And then today, you know how Americans think of other people. This is what Americans think about, you know, how we think about other people, right? You go down here. It's that's. So you move on. You say, okay. That's so that you know that's how we begin to think about others, right? It's the okay, yeah. So anyway, that's the by the way, if you're interested in those maps, this is called stereotype maps. You can find them online. But my point is to say that why Renaissance matters is that how can we get education back to its business about educating people, educating human beings, not producing economic beings or machines. And actually this is necessary. When I talk about this, people always think, oh my God, you know, are you really trying to go into the soft thinking? Because I live in Oregon, US, I think, you know, you're a soft thinking person. No, I said, it's actually an economical necessity for the future. You know, now our biggest challenge is what? Is how to get along. And the second biggest challenge is machines. Is artificial intelligence and smart machines for replacing human beings in their jobs. So we're now facing two big challenges. How do we deal with that really matters. So I think right now, all these reforms over the past few decades have been trying to solve one problem that's not necessary to solve. And actually solving it is the wrong thing to do, because we've been trying to solve what problem? You know, our biggest problem, many people look at a school is what? It's children. I mean, if schools have no children, there would be no problem. Right? I mean, kids are our biggest problem in schools. So and why are they a problem? Why are children our problem? Because children really are not the problem, but we look at them, they're problematic kids. So look at children like this. Okay, what do you think about this? You got basically two ideas to look at this kid. One, you take this very authoritarian view to say, what are we going to make you into? That's the national standards approach, right? You look at this child and say, okay, are you going to meet my standard or not? If you don't meet my standards in New Zealand, I'm sending you to Australia. That's how we do those things. We can look at kids. We say, what you will become. That's the approach we have today. We build graduate profiles. We think you should become like this. And we really have that view. Another view is to look at a child and say, okay, what he or she can be, I'll help you, and that is justified as a human being. We're not going to twist you. But the first mindset dominates our thinking. That is, we want you to be equipped with the skills and knowledge, attitudes, perspectives, whatever way we think you will become, we want to make you like that. You know, that's our view. But our problem is that, of course, children are different. You know, that's our, so they're so different. So now, you know, that makes us the challenge. We want the same product out of school, but our input are very different. So naturally, that's our biggest challenge right now. So why do we, you know, in schools, because we always assume there is a set of skills and knowledge that our children will need to succeed or thrive in the future. We have that assumption. And this is right now, any national standards, national curriculum, OECD's PISA, TIMSS, all those measures have one assumption, that all children need to have the same knowledge and the same skills to succeed in the future. And so we got into this big movement. So this assumption, this kind of movement is also accompanied by another assumption that is all children have the same opportunities, talents, and interests to learn the same thing at the same pace. So this basically, that's you say, our kids are different, but we assume they all should be equipped with the same idea, same knowledge. And if there's kids, if we cannot reduce them into homogeneous workers, our schools have failed. So that's basically how we have been working on. And this approach today is still prevalent. Look, if we go anywhere, the government, the public, and actually a lot of us, educators, parents, we still believe there is something everybody should have. So we have this assumption. That's why we have there's a profile, we call this readiness profile. That if you want to be ready for your next stage of life, you shall have this kind of things. That's why we have numeracy and literacy, and we have social studies, history, all those things. So there's content. But even in the most progressive thinkers today, the so-called 21st century skills, we still have the same approach, the same idea. You remember this, the 21st century skills, people talk about the 4 C's. You've heard about the 4 C's? Everybody should have the 4 C's. The creativity, communication, collaboration, critical thinking. And now people are adding more C's to that now. It's Michael Fuller. Has Michael come down this one? He has 6 C's, right? He's talking about content and character. I mean, who is there to dispute? But I said, well, we could have 8 C's. Why not? You got so many words with C's. It's you can add Canada and China. You can keep going with this idea. But the mentality is that we can prescribe. So it's whether the 4 C's, the B's, whatever you can do. And not only that, we have this view that everybody would have the same profile. That idea is literacy, numeracy, then we add the 4 C's. And the 4 C's, I've always kind of puzzled by this. Should we do the 4 C's equally? Distribute like 25% critical thinking, 25% creativity. What if you have some kid who is really, really creative, but hates to work with people? Will that work? That's what I call jagged profile. That is, I'm really extremely creative, or are you kind of mediocre in all domains? What would work? I think in our thinking, a lot of times they call it science has really kind of misguided us. Like, for example, we do the percentage thing. We used to think, well, what matters in life is 20% IQ and 80% EQ. You've heard about those general kind of pseudoscience, scientific thinking. Then you should wonder and say, okay, what's the relationship between IQ and EQ? Is it multiplication or is it addition? If it's a multiplication, that means if you have, no matter how much EQ you have, if you have 0 IQ, then you are 0. Right? You basically know nothing. It's just, you say, well, I really know how to hang out with people, but I really know nothing. I'm kind of ignorant. But you can reverse that. So this kind of relationship thing is really interesting. What we try to, basically, in a very non-scientific way, but pretends to be very scientific, to predict what matters to people's life. And education is like running an insurance company now. All this big data. Well, John Hattie's stuff, right? The visible learning stuff. That's from best pseudoscience with good numbers. Because that's basically, what it means is that you cannot predict. All this based on probability is based on the idea that you will fall into the trajectory. It's like when you drive in a red car, the insurance company is going to charge you more money because a red car is more likely to be pulled over by cops, but not this red car specifically. So this whole idea about prescribing something for others based on probability is completely wrong. Because what works for that child may not work for this child. No child is a statistical probability. So how did we arrive at that? How did we do this before? How did we even come up with this idea to prescribe things? How did we do that? You know, that's actually fairly simple. We've been doing this for all our life. It's that we look at kids like this. So this is what our input are. Then we want to know what we can do to help them to be ready for the future. So then we look at the future. But no one has lived in the future. You know what? So when we do the curriculum, how do we do curriculum? We are trying to predict the future. So the curriculum is often done by people of the past. Because who gets to write the curriculum? Old people. Right? If you're not old, you're not authority. If you're not old, you cannot be recruited to write the curriculum. You don't know enough people. Do you see what I mean? So you always rely on the old people to write the curriculum for the future. And at the best, some curriculum, the most enlightened curriculum people have grandchildren. That's their future rely on, the talk to grandchildren. Have you noticed how many politicians come to talk about, my education, my grandson goes to the school, he comes back. So luckily, I hope you guys really try to find people who have grandchildren. They'll get at least they know a little bit about the future, not completely based on the past. So how do we do this? So we look at, we invite people, then we look at what do we have based on past experiences. So we look at the world of work. So that we used to look at work like this. We used to look at a work like this. So then we extract from this to say, okay, they all look the same. Let's say what kind of skills and knowledge they have. So that's how we built the base, right? That's how we build the base. We talk about everything. Then we try to iron out any nuances. Because we can't have that. And we want to take all of these things and describe what all children will need to succeed in the future. That, of course, doesn't work. Because as I said before, you cannot really predict whatever we have, now is going to happen in the future. Another approach to do this is that we study famous people. Have you noticed that if you go to the bookstores, you buy a lot of books about this famous person, that famous person. And this is, by the way, a lot of leadership research is like this. That's why it doesn't work for you principals. None of the works. You guys know how to study. You've read a lot of leadership books, and they always study 5, the 3 strategies that makes you most successful. But what makes you successful is not going to make what makes that person successful. It never works out. Because in order to extract the commonalities, you have to ignore the individuality. But what works is actually the individuality that works. So this is why, when you see, when we study these people, what makes you a successful actor? If you combine Brad Pitt and George Clooney, you say, well, good looking matters. Well, there are plenty of people who's not good looking that works. Do you notice that whole thing? But that's how we do. We kind of describe and ascribe the whole thing that we impose on people. And so this is why in education, our first big challenge was the reduction doesn't work. That is, we reduce individuals into homogeneous workforce. This is what education has been trying to do to create workers like this. So we make them the same. Then we have another issue with this, is that children actually are not easily reduced. That's the problem. Children, in our education, we have this idea that we can teach anything to any child. We have this kind of grand view. And we can make you do whatever we like you to do. We already have that view. But of course, that's wrong. It's like, I've been thinking, have you tried throwing a dead bird? Of course not. It's and the difference between, you can throw a dead bird and practically predict its trajectory, right? And then try a live bird. Now, Randy, you can say that's okay. If you grab a dead crow, you throw in, you can say at 0.5 second, 0.3 second, that's called grade level expectation. You can expect where that bird can be. But if you pick a live one, can you predict that? That's what education are. We have children who are unfortunately live birds. I mean, they think they have agency, they have backgrounds, they have what they're born with, they have talent, they have interest, they have pursuit, they have social relationships, and then we try to force them into a certain trajectory. Of course, it doesn't work, okay? But no matter. So all our reforms have been trying to address those problems. Number one, not every child wants to play the game. Not every child can play the game because of their opportunities. And not everyone believes the game is worth playing. So far, if you look at all our education issues, what we've been addressing? Children not meeting their expectations. Children not moving as fast as we expect of other children, the same speed. So then we've invented different phrases called achievement gaps. Remember, try to close the achievement gap. We're trying to help children retention. We're trying to deal with the special education students. We're trying to deal with the gifted and talented. Do you guys notice the whole thing? Everything we're trying to do is homogenize. Basically, we failed to turn our children into homogeneous machines, and our education reform efforts have been directed in addressing that as deficit. But what I would like to talk about today, all those problems are precisely what we actually have to look for solutions in for the future. Because the future is very different. When we try to turn our children into machines like this, into homogeneous mechanical devices like this, and those jobs are completely gone. So when we think about how do we deal with the future actually lies in our past. In the age of smart machines, when artificial intelligence is really doing a lot of human jobs, we need to help our children become more human, not more mechanical. So our education reform efforts, whatever identifies as our deficit, our problems in the education system, might actually be the solution to our future. So why Renaissance matters. By the way, Jill did not ask me to work Renaissance into this talk. Okay, I just saw that. I said, well, that sounds very good. Okay, it was so. If you let's think about this. Go back to think about this. What is the human nature? What makes us human? Number one, what makes us human is we are different. Human beings are very different. And that difference used to be judged as a problem because most of the jobs we had required homogeneous skills and knowledge. That is, and where does the human difference come from? That really comes from two parts. One is called the nature, another one is called nurture. We don't have time to really go through the psychology of all of this, but you need to understand that we know today very well, very simple, that everybody is endowed with dispositions, or we call predispositions. Sometimes we call that talents, sometimes we call that personality, sometimes we call that interest. There's different, whatever, we actually differ in many different domains. So we have that genetic possibility to be different. Now, of course, this difference cannot be treated as deficit. Differences simply means difference. So, for example, some of you are born to be taller, some shorter, some heavier, some lighter. The same way, we have known that human beings are talented in cognitively differently. You probably know Howard Gardner's, what I think just now was mentioned as Jill mentioned and Glenn mentioned as multiple intelligences. Multiple intelligences has often been misunderstood, but it's a good idea to think about multiple intelligence as a good framework. This is not exact. I would have said there are many more kinds of talents than these categories. And Howard has added more to this as well. So it basically means that human beings are biased. Some of you are born with more talent in music, that you truly are born with an audio system. Your hearing system, you are more sensitive to rhythm, to sound. You notice that in your children? So that is the base of a music talent. But with a music talent, it needs something else. Music, you may be talented, but you need the nurture part, the environment, the experience to trigger that. You could be, if you are born with music and you're born into a musical family, you get exposed to music. Then you respond to music. Then you become better at music. Then you go to school. School gives you more musical opportunities. Do you notice how that enhances that? But if you have musical talent, but you are born into a society, into a family, who does not even allow you to have access to music, you will never have the opportunity to develop that. So that's basically it's combined. Okay, so it's called nature via nurture. So that is actually good example. During the Cultural Revolution in China, almost there's no musical talent. And it's surprising, around 1979, 1980s, Hong Kong was the music hub of everything. Can you imagine Hong Kong, 6 million people, China was 1 billion at that time. And they had to import musical talents there. Because China as a country really said nobody gets to sing or do anything entertaining other than the communist songs or those kind of things. So the talent there's this interesting trigger. So our children come to school with different talent. And whether a society respects a different talent has to do whether we put value into them. So you have children music talent. Some people may be smart with language. Now if you look at our schools, what do? Schools today, basically, we are discriminating against those people who are not talented in language or math. That's basically what schools do. So we basically are discriminating about maybe 80% of the population. And those students become your problem students. Those students have to be sent to remediation. It's those students into special education, and they are depressed. Basically, that's how we do this, the whole idea. People are not only talented in different ways, but we also have different personalities. We have children who are more extroverted than introverted. We have children who are more open to new experiences. Some are more close to, kind of less open to opportunities. So this is called Big 5 personality traits. People kind of align on a different spectrum. You notice some children are born really into a lot of extroversion. They like to talk. Have you noticed a lot of kids? Well, I fly a lot, since I noticed the drastic personality difference among the passengers. Some of them get on the airplane, close their eyes, just put their head, sit up, and they don't want to talk to anybody. That's me. And then you got other people try to, even if you have your head set down, they still try to talk to you. So they're Now, all this extroversion, and we also have different interests. People are born with different interests. Some people are interested in power. Others people may be interested in knowledge. Some people are interested in pursuing, let's say, physical movement. Others are less interested in physical movement. So all of these new things, there's personality traits as well as talents, and this motivation, all this. So like this is called natural motivators. Some people are born to be interested in power, but not everybody is equally interested in power. So if you have 5 children in your family, one of them want to be the boss. And others are more interested in knowledge. They are the curious people. They keep asking you questions, whenever you do something different. But they don't necessarily go together. Some people are very much into power, but have no interest in knowing anything. That's Trump. Really. So I just want to tell you what to do, but I don't want to know. That's this. If you go through this is actually quite an interesting theory. Okay. So I'm showing you this basically to show you that how we can be different. And the difference comes from nature and nurture. Because whenever we do any of those things, for example, human society attach value to them, to the differences. For example, we do not value curiosity in some societies. We actually hate them. Curious people are rebels. They want to know too much. Do you notice that? Curious people, and they're actually different professions require different kind of things. For example, some of you may not think, vengeance. Vengeance is like something really interesting. And here we go. So, vengeance. Vengeance is not good for you if you are a driver. Okay, I know, on the road. But it's great for sports people. So every little one of this is valuable in some domain. Because we attach a definition of value to any of those things. The same thing with the personality. If you notice the personality piece, for example, today, what do we value most? We value conscientiousness. Those are the people who turn in their work on time, follow orders, follow directions. We cultivate that. So if we take the same idea here, ask ourselves, in our existing curriculum, in our schools, what do we value? We value language, math, we value conscientious, we value some extroverted people, and then the rest actually, we don't like them. Most of our schools get rid of them. Just look at this. What do we value here? We value students who are trying to be acceptance, being part of a group. So when we set up a curriculum, when we set up a school culture that's dominated by one class of a society, want everybody to become the same, then we make a judgment. We use this to make a judgment to say who gets to be promoted and who doesn't. So this is the idea. We make a judgment of this child. So our education is very much like our garden. This is a gardening approach. Our gardening approach. I really used to like gardeners. I thought they were very nice people, but now I realize they are not. What gardeners do? The first thing they do is to decide who gets to be cultivated, who gets in. In the tulip garden, a rose is a weed, right? So now, our new education, I really think we have to rethink a lot. That is, can we think about an education, a school, as a nature reserve? That is, every talent, every personality, every pursuit of interest can be cultivated, can be treated as valuable because they not only are useful in their own right, but also contributes to the long-term sustainability of an ecosystem. Can we think like that? So the first point I need to prove is that all talent is valuable. We need to prove that, right? Because in a traditional sense, if we go back to the Howard Gardner's theme, not every talent is valuable. Let's think about art. Throughout of most human history, artists do not make independent living. Do you guys notice that? Most of the time, they have to rely on somebody else. I mean, every human society has some sort of art, but very few people can dedicate their life to the art for the most of human history. It's until very recently. That's changing, right? Because art people, I came from a little village in China. We can't afford to have an art person there in a village. So most of the time they were useless. Art people. And you guys notice the whole thing. But today, I would like to say that art is on the rise. You notice that? Look, everything has become art. Do you guys notice that? Even you look at your hairstyle, look at your bag, your interior designer, and videographer. I mean, actually, even food has become art. You notice that? That's why the more money you pay, the less food you get. Because it's art. You're enjoying art now. It's not food. It's that like Daniel Pink says, you don't buy a car anymore. You buy a moving sculpture, right? That's even human beings. This is probably most. I will say this, but human plastic surgery. What is it? It's human sculpting. Isn't it? The human. It's stupid, but people do it. Who would pay people to cut them up? But anyway, that's what. But we do anyway. So that's look at the whole art is on the rise. So there's actually interesting debate about this to say, is dyslexia a gift or a problem? Because dyslexic individuals may have a hard time reading, but their brain wiring makes them great at art. So now do you want to fix somebody so they can read as a bad reader, or do you want to help them become a great artist? Now, how did this happen? So I want to refer you back to something that we need to think about. How did this happen has a lot to do with Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer. You probably know this. Rudolph had a red nose, and red nose was considered an anomaly, a bad thing in the Republic of Reindeers, something. So their national standards would have saying that all noses for reindeers should be black. So Rudolph's redness was a problem, and Rudolph would have been put into special education to fix him. Just think, because just out of line. But then on the foggy Christmas Eve, Santa Claus was looking, I would say, a GPS or something to guide his sled, and suddenly the redness becomes valuable. So how the useless becomes useful. This is a really good example to think about that. How a talent that used to be undervalued becomes valuable. I used to use the example a lot. I'll call Kim Kardashian, how the useless becomes useful. You know her, right? She's a great example, really. She's a good example to say how useless she is throughout most of human history, throughout most of human society today. Kim Kardashian, right? You think about her, she is quite bad, in many ways. But at the same time, there is a small percentage of people finding her useful. How did that happen? So let's think of it this way. In jobs like this, we don't need anybody who is exceptional. If jobs like this, Lady Gaga would be useless here. You wouldn't hire her to do a job like this, would you? Nobody would hire. Most people would not be hired here. Today, the people who created human history to do a lot of things. Jobs, Gates, all these people, all the musicians would not be hired here, or creative people. What has changed is what Daniel Pink calls the age of abundance. The age of necessity to the age of abundance. That is, technology has produced a lot more things now in a given time. We call that raised productivity. So human beings now have two things which we did not have before. One is called more leisure time. One is called more disposable income. More leisure time. So machines relieved human beings from working all day to secure necessities. And now we have more time. When you have more time, what do? You consume different products. And when you have more disposable income, when you don't have to buy the necessaries, food, shelter, and clothing, what do? You buy different products and services. So what most of us consume today in the developed world is psychological, aesthetic, and intellectual products. You notice you actually go back, take a look how much money you've spent on different things. Okay, so it's aesthetic. You love something not because it's necessary, but because you like it. All this we call personalized consumption. How many TV channels do we have? How many bands do we have? And so that actually creates something drastically different from before. And now, when you consume psychological products, when it's personal, it's about choice. And the choice matters a lot. Because when in today's society, everything is about choice. Kardashian is just like a choice. Kim Kardashian. So this is, I use the old example I got is when I went to America, I moved from a society of necessity. That was necessary to use soap to wash yourself. So when I went to America, I tried to buy shampoo to wash my hair, and I couldn't do it because I did not know what kind of hair I had. It's you need to know. It's you need to know it is oily, normal, or dry. That's the basic things, right? So we have to have the choices. You notice the shampoo bottles. This is actually a fascinating example to think about. Well, does it really matter if oily, normal, or dry? I never had. For 5,000 years, my village had no problem with that, without those choices. But again, we'd like to have that right now, okay? And do you look at the shapes of the bottle? Tall, small, square, round. Do they matter? Anything to do with your hair? No. How about the colors? Do you notice that? And now if this is from 1990s. Now if you go to a shampoo store today, there are even more choices, right? So life, every aspect of human life today is like this, choices. Now you look at this thing. Kim Kardashian is basically like a bottle of shampoo. Some people like her, some people don't. But also, more importantly, look at this one. What kind of human talents we need to create these products? Not only reading, not only math, is we can make use of every type of human talent. You need scientists. People are curious about nature to discover how to wash your hair. Have you noticed? People use mud, people use tea, people use oil. I don't know what kind of things they use to discover. You need people continuously to inquire to find new ways to do this. You need people who are good with art, visual, to create the bottles, the shapes, the colors to attract you. You need people who are interested in singing to sell you shampoo, right? Remember those? Have you ever seen a TV commercial without someone dancing with a shampoo bottle? Which actually confused me a lot when I went to America from China, 1990s. I thought in America you got to wash hair while dancing. You have to, but look, you need people who is good at organizing stuff, who is good at arranging logistics. You need people who is good at writing scripts, to market this stuff. In essence, the whole thing shows every human talent can be valuable. That is, if Kim Kardashian is useful, anyone can be useful. But there's a catch to that. You have to be great. Because for every job in the future, when machines take over all these repetitive jobs, for each job, we will only need a few great people to fill it. The future is like this. That is, we're going to have a lot of different kinds of jobs, but each job doesn't need a lot of people. Before, we have few types of jobs, but each job can employ a lot of people. This comes to the second point that Kardashian became useful. It's called globalization. The foggy Christmas Eve for us is really technology and the arrival of the age of abundance, where we consume psychological, intellectual, aesthetic products and services. Second thing is the age of globalization. Because every one of us have talent that may have a very narrow appeal to a small group of people. Like Kardashian, she is really hated by most people, loved by a few, percentage-wise. So it might be 1% like her. Let's assume 1%. So if she had stayed in a little village of 500 people, even if everybody liked her, she could not make a living. But today, with technology, with globalization, what does she do now? She can reach 7 billion people. 7 billion. 1% out of 7 billion is a lot of people. So this is why when you think, this actually works this way. If you think you're strange, someone is stranger than you on the internet. And that stranger person is very important for us to think. So this is why, no matter where you are, how small a school you are, especially when we have children who are so strange, you can always find some people to go with them on the internet if you work hard. Okay, that's called globalization. But that globalization means global competition as well. So that means, you can have a global audience, but you also have a global competition. So what does that mean? It means really for us talent. So remember we call it nature and nurture. Everybody has talent. Everybody has different experiences. But now this requires us to say, you have to be unique and great. You cannot be like another one. So do not try to be a second Kim Kardashian. She has occupied that niche. Our children have to have not the same profile, like, equally mediocre in creativity, collaboration doesn't work. You really have to be unique in your own domain. That comes to the idea called jagged profile. Do you know about jagged profile? That is, you allow valleys and peaks. Jagged profile, this is actually an illustration by Todd Rose in his book called The End of Average. The end of average. It's an interesting concept, but it's not done in education very well. So if you look at these two people, we always tend to ask, who is larger? You probably cannot answer that question. Who is larger, right? But now we have to be specifically, in terms of body mass, they may be the same. That's what we call GPA in our students, right? Because now you have these two people are apparently very different. But in education, we ignore that difference. So I don't know, in New Zealand, do you do GPAs or you do composite scores? So imagine the blue one, height, let's say represents math. Means that the blue person is really good at math, 100%, 100 out of 100 points. But in terms of the torso, the tummy, smaller, that's called language, okay? So the blue one would be 100% in math, 0 in language, but you average that out, it's 50%, that's 50 points. And the red one may be 100% in perfect in language, but 0%, 0 in math, that's 50. So in our traditional education, we treat them as the same. You have two children, you notice, like one is really good at math, not as good, bad at language, and of course you can do the same thing almost every subject in that. We average out, we don't look at what they're good at. And then we look at the children and say, okay, what you are not good at. That's what we try to fix it. For example, you may be good at language, but I'm going to fix your math. So you can be, so hold your language, I'll bring you up here, so everybody becomes mediocre. Mediocrity doesn't do you any good, because you need to be extremely good in some area. So now my view is going to come down to this. Everybody has to be great at something. And that greatness comes from uniqueness. That is, you may, by the way, right now the categorization that you may be mediocre in math, but you may be mediocre in physics, but if you combine this, you become unique, then you become great in that domain. So you need to be great. But greatness comes from what? Greatness really comes from three things. It's called 3T. Talent, what you are born with. Time, you have to devote a lot of time. If you want to be good at something, Malcolm Gladwell tells us, 10,000 hours, that's popular science, more or less. It can be 11,000, can be 7,000, but really means a lot of time. And good teaching. Because good teaching means you do not repeat your 10,000 hours, because 10,000 hours is not the same as 1 hour repeated 10,000 times. That happens a lot. Without good teaching, we always repeat. Okay, 10,000 hours means really 10,000 hours of unique experiences. So let's review that, the 3 T's. Why most people cannot become great. First of all, the T, talent. In education, we have kind of ignored the idea about talent. Because in traditional schools, we try to believe that you can learn anything, which is actually true. That's why we have this growth mindset idea, right? You heard about growth mindset from Carol Dweck? Sounds great, great mindset. Yes, you can learn anything, but you cannot learn to be great at everything. So that's why without talent, it's very hard. So sometimes if you are not smart, if you do not recognize the constraints of what you're born with, growth mindset can be simple stupidity. Okay? I've been advised to say, okay, yeah, Yong, you can play rugby. I say, yeah, I can learn how to play rugby, but I doubt I'll be able to make a living. How many Chinese have you seen on the rugby field? They kind of got kicked out before they get to the field. You can't do it. So this is the first thing you need to get to this talent point. It says that everybody can learn to swim, but not everyone can become a Michael Phelps. Everyone can learn to paint, but not everyone can become a Picasso. So I can force you to memorize Shakespeare, but I cannot force you even with a gun to make you Shakespeare. So the talent part is really important. Number 2, time is important. Time is a constant. If you spend time in one thing, you cannot possibly spend the same time on something else. So like say, well, yeah, we can do all of this, then let's get you to fix your kind of math, and then you can do this. You can't. That's just a trade-off. You cannot possibly do everything. So now we have to, I will leave the teaching part outside. Let's just do these 2 T's. What does it mean for us? To cultivate unique, great talent, you basically have to say, we will forgive people, or we'll help people to understand and admit they are not going to be good at everything. You have to give up. This is the hardest thing for parents and teachers to say, I will not make you be mediocre at everything, and you will forgive me for not being good. And that is actually, honestly, the basis for true collaboration. That is, you cannot be good at everything. So it's a personal experience. I got into education. I'm here because I allowed myself to be really bad at something. And what my father allowed me to be something. Some of you may heard of this story, and this is really, really true story of me. I want to just give you an example of this. This is the village I was born into, my house in China, Sichuan province. My father still lives there. So the national standard in my village, or the village standard of a good boy, a good child, was driving a water buffalo. So that's the core curriculum in my village. I was really bad. I was bad at water buffalo. I was bad at most of farming job. I did not like him. I have no talent. I had no interest. And that's why I said, my father said, I'm not going to put you remediation. So why don't you go to school? I was bad at farming. So he said, why don't you go to school? That's why I'm here. Okay. And another thing is that I was really bad at math. So I chose to study English. So don't worry about this thing. Chinese can be bad at math. I know you're thinking that actually last year I was with Jack Ma. I don't know how many of you know Jack Ma. Jack Ma is the founder of Alibaba. You know Alibaba, one of the largest internet companies. So I was kind of with him. He wants to build a school, so we're chatting. And we kind of both are bad at math. And he was even worse than me. So I got, in the college entrance exam, 1982, I got a 3 out of 100. That's pretty bad if you know math. Okay, 3 out of 100. And Jack got about 1 out of 100. So he founded the biggest company. I didn't, apparently math did not stop him from building an internet company, high-tech company. He gave up his math to study English. And it is English that introduced him to a new modern idea. So this idea about something systematic is completely wrong. Recently, actually, it's a 92-year-old Harvard biologist came out to say the same thing. Said STEM, science, technology, engineering, math is the worst invention for scientists. So if we ever trying to teach STEM, he said, if you're passionate about something, go pursue it. You don't need, because today a lot of people believe, if you want to become, let's say, astrophysicist, you better have physics. You better have math. And then you better have all that. Said, no. If you're interested in the sky, study that. Just go for that. You don't need all this basic stuff going on this thing. We have this belief that if you want to be something, we have this foundation thing. Okay, that's actually the wrong way to think about this stuff. You don't have to. And also, most importantly, your weakness at something creates value for other people. So other people can help you. So that's what I call true collaboration is called outsourcing your weakness to other people. And this is, I allow myself to be bad at math. I can have friends, or I can have colleagues. They got good at math, they're good at statistics. I can work with them. I learned how to outsource when I was, again, in my village. I was very small, got bullied all the time. And most, those guys, they're big. So I went to school. I gained something I was interested in. I was good at reading. I was doing homework. So I began to outsource my personal protection to the big guys. I did their homework. I let them copy my test, and they did my fighting for me. That's true collaboration. So when you teach collaboration does not need to be taught. Right? It's talk about appreciation of your strength and your weaknesses. That creates called social intelligence. That's natural collaboration. So you need to understand the whole thing. So now you want to become great and unique. You have to admit you're not going to be good at everything. So when human beings against machines, first thing is called diversity. Remember that I was talking about diversity is very important. And diversity means we complement each other with our talents, our skills, and our knowledge. But then that comes to the second point is, okay, in a new education, what makes us all human beings another thing is called human interdependence. Understanding human interdependence. How do you understand human interdependence? Even in my own village, human beings were interdependent. That is, I have to rely on you to achieve my own well-being. Human beings can be self-interested, but they should not be selfish. Self-interested means that you understand that your interest is best generated by creating value for other people. Your value is realized through helping others to become better. And that is what we call the entrepreneurial spirit. Like, so if, for example, you can sing, you can write poetry, you can do painting. But if that does not better the world or other people's life, that's of no value. Because that doesn't do anything. So that's what we need to do, is to how do we create value for other people? That becomes the second thing that machines cannot do. Machines can solve problems, but machines so far cannot identify problems to solve. When PISA and other tests talk about, I'm going to teach you problem-solving skills, I said, no. Teach me problem identification skills. How do you know if a problem is worth solving? I was actually in Singapore talking the same thing, because they scored number 1 on the PISA as problem-solving country. I said, well, you know how to solve a problem, but do you know what problem is worth solving? A problem worth solving, in essence, is the most important thing to ask, because it's ethical, moral, about creating value for other people. Today, when we talk about entrepreneurship, we talk about invention, we're going to talk about ethical inventions, ethical entrepreneurships, that how do you do better for others? And that is the other point that just comes down to the idea of being great. So you can be great, you can be good, but in order to be ethical, in order to have a happy life, you need to have something called self-actualization. Maslow's self-actualization actually gets into self-transcendence. Self-transcendence today is picked up by positive psychologists as authentic happiness. Authentic happiness comes from use your strength, your unique strength, to create value for the world and for others. So this is like a new form of education. So what does this new form of education mean? Basically, it comes down to this one thing. Everybody can be great, but that greatness comes from a creative combination of your talents, of your experiences, of your resources. And that greatness should be creating value for other people and should be supported by your passion. So this is, and you create value for others. So this is what I'm imagining what education can do. You can help children to understand what they can do and what they want to do, their ability and the passion. Help them understand their limitation and the potential. So if they are really bad, low in ability and low in passion, if they're not good at doing something, and if they really don't want to do it, what should you advise them? You should advise them to avoid it at any cost. But right now in our schools, do you guys notice a lot of times, how often do we get our children to do things they don't like and do things they're not going to be good at in the future anyway? And then we should also, what if you see a child who is really, let's say, good at something, but really hate it? Have you noticed that? It's a lot of Asian kids like this. They may be in math, but they hate math. And you tell them, that's just a job for now. Just have to do it. You know, we have a lot of time, we got just go do it. And then you have people who are really, you have a lot of children who is really interested in doing something, but you know they are no good. Then you said, well, you can advise them, that's just a hobby. Okay, where you want them to go, the sweet spot is something they're good at and something they're passionate about. And the third dimension I did not put up there is something of value to other people, globally and locally. So how do we do this? So this is what I wrote this book, and the title of this one is called Reach for Greatness. So basically think about, I use a term called personalizable education. How do you do it in education? So the challenge we have of before, I want to summarize this one, is that education has been trying to make everybody the same, which is impossible because human beings are different. And also because we use one standards or one set of common standards to make people the same, and when people are different from that, we treat that as deficit. Aboriginal people, immigrants, people who have anything, poor families, everybody actually has some strength. But when they come to school, if their strength does not match our standards, we treat that as weakness. Then we fix them. We try to make them the same. Traditionally, if you only measure people by one standard, the achievement gap can never be closed. Because one standard is designed to sort people. Do you notice that the hierarchy people? So now we need to broaden our definition of every child has talent that's worth cultivating. Let's start from there. Strength from there. But the second thing, that strength has to be of value to other people. To be happy. They have to be able to contribute to other people's life to be happy. So how do we do this? So in this book, I kind of come up with this idea. I want to discuss this with you. The idea of a co-ownership. Because, again, no individual is truly an isolated island. So can we imagine the public represented by the government, educators represented by all of you, and the private, child and parents. So those two things. So how do they mingle? Can we co-own their learning? And co-own learning, there's two aspects. One is called the personalized learning pathways for each individual student. We've been talking a lot about that. It's called student voice, student choice, student agency in their own learning as co-owners of their own learning. I don't think any child should be the sole owner of their own learning because the public has interest in them as citizens. Parents have the interest in them as future generations of the community. Educators have interest in them. So we co-own, so the personalized pathways are still co-designed with everybody involved. So that's one way to think about individual pathways. I don't know if you have IEP. Some of you may have IEP. So IEP's problem is that the outcome of IEP is being predetermined by the public. That is by the national, I don't know about New Zealand. In America, at least, it is determined that I'm going to help you to reach the same outcome, but in different ways. So that's a lot of personalization is not done to personalize the outcome. We only personalize the pathway. You notice the whole thing? But in this new model, we have to think about the outcome needs to be personalized. That you can choose. You don't have to meet the same expectation as prescribed in some standards or policies. There is another part called learning environments, schools. This specifically, I think, applies to you as school principals. Can we make students the change partners, equal co-owners of our school environment? Because when you make students co-own the school environment, they become less selfish. They have to understand learning the whole world is not just to serve them. They have to serve others. For example, when they talk about how I'm going to achieve my best, but achieving your best may come at the cost of others. So they have to co-own this whole learning environment. So that is, the idea is to say, okay, children are big change partners. By the way, I don't know if you noticed that in a lot of education reforms, policies, we seldom treat children as autonomous agencies. We treat them as the passive recipients of our actions. We always think it's the adults who can do something. I think today's youth deserve to be recognized as co-owners. And I don't know if you're aware of this big movement now in society called community-owned grocery stores, community-owned banks. Anything that can be local, more local participation of every member of the community, it thrives, it does better. I think that education is the same way. So just to bring back everything together, I've been thinking, what actually the future of education is? The future of education is precisely in the past. From Confucius to to Socrates, to Plato, to all those people. It is co-owned, it is dialogue, it is conversation. Whatever new technology is there just to help relieve us from that. Before, there's an unhealthy trend in today's education. Because once we have technology, we think it's going to make us more efficient. This is a horrible thing I want to show you. Someone showed me, this is called artificial intelligence in action in education. So a lot of people now trying to sell this, they call this personalized learning. Because now this is machine camera tracking students' attention level on the fly. Please have a camera so parents and teachers can know at any millisecond if a child is paying attention or not. But this is a fake personalization. This is big news, and this is if you look at what they do, they report each day how many kids are happy or unhappy at what moment. That's not true personalization. That's called Big Brother watching. And so what we need, ultimately, it is an education that is human. We can let the knowledge acquisition, let the learning go, but teach us to become human. That's different. Of course, Confucius and Plato did not have massive education. They had a lot of personalized human education on a small scale. Today, we need on a large scale, personalized human education. So the theme of Renaissance really, really kind of strikes a chord with me to think about how do we move forward. So I think in New Zealand is at a very important time and a place. I know you are one of the education systems that have been less affected by the germ movement or by any of others, but still we need to move forward to say, okay, in the future, we need to make education more personal, more human, and learn how do we get along, and how do we, again, think about education is not building a garden, but to keep a nature reserve that every talent is worth cultivating, and every talent contributes to the sustainability of our large human society. Thank you. Thank you.